Morning. I am Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor, and I have the pleasure of serving the constituents in the 20th Ward. We are here this morning to first say thank you to the citizens of Chicago. With all that's going on, Chicago got together real quick to make sure that communities were clean. And so I want to say thank you to not just the constituents of the 20th Ward, but the people in Chicago. You really show that you care about this city and that we can get together and make change. I have the pleasure of having Jewel-Osco in my community, which for too long we were a food desert. And so I stand here today thanking Jules for their $1 million donation to rebuild Chicago. It is important that communities that have been disinvested in for years be brought together. And so this is just the first step. I want to thank Jewel-Osco. I want to thank Mayor Lori Lightfoot for this opportunity, and know that any dollars that you spend at Jules will be donated and matched so that we can rebuild this city. Now I bring you all our Mayor Lori Lightfoot.
Thank you, Alderman Taylor. I just have to say great thanks and praise to Jewel. As we saw the looting unfold on Saturday and Sunday and Monday, many of us, me included, worried about what would happen. What would happen with these businesses and these institutions that so many communities fought hard to bring economic development to our neighborhoods. And I have to tell you, having spoken with a lot of retailers over the course of this week, painful, tough discussions to be sure, but the commitment of retailers here in Chicago to rebuild has been phenomenal. And of course, first among them, Jewel-Osco. So I'm grateful to be here this morning. I want to thank again the Alderman Taylor, because she is a fierce advocate for her community. I want to thank Dr. Helene Gayle of the Chicago Community Trust, who has been acting like a lifelong Chicagoan, but we are grateful for your leadership. Bill O'Keefe, Vice President from UFCW Local 881. Frankie Payne from the Southeast Chamber, Chicago Chamber of Commerce. Business Affairs and Consumer Protection Commissioner Rosa Escarino. And I just got to take a moment. This woman has been working tirelessly, night and day, to really be out and present in neighborhoods, talking to local businesses, talking to local chambers, finding out what the needs are, and then making sure that her colleagues in the city government, me included, are being responsive to those needs. This woman is the epitome of a public servant. She's unsung, but I want to just highlight what amazing work she does every single day, not just in a crisis, but especially now. Thank you, Rosa, for all you've done for our city. And last but not least, I want to recognize Government Relations Director of Jewel-Osco, Mary Frances Trucco. Mary Frances, we've known each other for a long time. You're a great partner, and I very much appreciate you being here. We are here today to announce Together Now, Chicago's fund to rebuild our neighborhoods. Let me say that again. Together Now. The events over the past few days here in Chicago have brought a range of emotions, and I know we've all experienced them. The murder of George Floyd was painful and traumatic for all of us. And we stand with the peaceful, righteous protests that have occurred across our city and across our nation. But of course, we draw a line when we see those peaceful demonstrations being hijacked and used as cover for criminal conduct. We can never sanction that, and we must separate the two, because one is righteous and the other is wrong. The violence and destruction we saw take place against our communities served to steal the dreams and the livelihoods of business owners. And in some instances, they stole the few sources of food and medicine for our families across our city. That's why we immediately embarked on developing this fund to help our neighbors and businesses recover. And let me also just say, We know that the need for food and medicine is great in many areas across our city. And while Jewel-Osco rapidly coming back online to meet the need of residents and other businesses doing the same, again, this is civic leadership. This is what it means, particularly in a time of crisis. And I want to give my full heartfelt thanks to everyone standing here and within the sound of my voice for what you have done every single day since our neighborhoods erupted, to calm the peace, to pick up the pieces, and to start the rebuilding process that we know is going to make Chicago better and stronger in the future. The Together Now Fund is a true collaboration with the Chicago Community Trust and the City of Chicago to unite money raised by Chicago's philanthropies, corporations, and individuals, which we will be giving to small businesses and not-for-profits across Chicago that have been mostly badly hurt and damaged over the past week, with an eye always towards equity. We are starting this fund with an initial $10 million city commitment to address the immediate needs of small businesses. But I'm also proud to announce that thanks to Jewel-Osco's incredible support, we've already been able to raise that amount by another $1 million, all of which goes towards helping our small businesses rebuild. And we are not stopping there. On top of Jewel's $1 million donation, they're also launching a pin pad campaign through July 31st in all 37 of their locations in the city of Chicago, which will allow customers to make donations to the fund while they're checking out. So you should shop at Jewel, and you should take the opportunity when you check out to add to this incredibly important fund. I want to take this opportunity to commend everyone at Jewel again, and to thank you all for your leadership and corporate stewardship during this difficult time. Over the past several days, Jewel and others have spent their time repairing the damage caused by looting and already reopened multiple stores, including the 95th, 87th locations, which opened today, and this one, which opened earlier this week. Thanks to this fund, many Chicago businesses will be able to address the critical obstacles that businesses are facing and helping them make the reopening in our Phase 3 a true reality for them, their employees, their customers. Getting our businesses back on their feet is vital to really moving our city forward and restoring vibrancy and hope in our neighborhoods. So for more information about the fund, I encourage you to visit cct.org, that's chicagocommunitytrust.org/Together Now. I will invite Dr. Gayle here in a moment, but I want to also add that the Business Affairs and Consumer Protection Department, as well as the OMC, have teamed up to create an emergency alert program specifically for Chicago's businesses. Now, you know that we have a 911 or reverse 911 system. If there's a weather emergency or some other kind of emergency, you can get a text message that gives you an alert. Well, we're building that system for our businesses. So if there's an emergency in an area, they will get an alert. That means store managers, security officers, other people that businesses themselves pick and designate, so that if there is something that happens, we can immediately alert you to something going on in a particular locale. We can geocode it, but I'm excited about this opportunity, and we encourage all businesses to sign up. Local business owners and managers should text CHIBIZ, that's CHIBIZ, to 67283, or visit chicago.gov/CHIBIZ alerts to opt in and receive targeted emergency alerts for the business community via CHIBIZ emergency alerts. Please make sure that you sign up to this important system. This is just one more way that Chicago is stepping up for our businesses and communities in need. You deserve our support, and you will have our support in whatever way we can. Thank you very much, and Now I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Helene Gayle to the podium.
Good morning, and thank you very much, Mayor Lightfoot, Alderman Taylor, and to Jewel-Osco for your incredible commitment to this community. The mayor said that I have not been here very long. I'm going on about 3 years, and I have really come to love this city. And maybe because as a African American, there's a little bit of Chicago in all of us. So I really feel very deeply about what we're about to do today to really help to in the effort to rebuild this city and several of these communities. And Mayor Lightfoot talked about the fact that these issues are incredibly complex, but I think in one way, at the core of a lot of what we have seen, including some of the destruction, is this sense of hopelessness that many people feel. And what we're doing today is about restoring hope that neighborhoods that have borne the brunt of disinvestment are not forgotten in this, and that we recognize that people need places where they can get their groceries, get their medications, make sure that their children have essential needs, etc. So I'm just thrilled and pleased to be part of launching this fund Together Now. And when I say those words, it makes me feel hope to think about how we rebuild and bring this community together now. So we're pleased as the Chicago Community Trust to be working with donors, philanthropy, the private sector to get the needed resources into these communities. We know how important small businesses are to the neighborhoods. They not only provide economic engine, they provide jobs, they provide essential needed goods and services, and again, they provide hope. So I'm thrilled to be here with you today. Again, thank all of you and thank Mayor Lightfoot for your leadership. We know how important it is that we continue on the path of making this a Chicago that works for all. So thank you very much.
Mary Fran. Thank you.
Thanks to Mayor Lightfoot, her administration, the aldermen, and the communities for this partnership, for their support. As you're all aware, Jewel-Osco has deep roots in this community, in the Chicagoland area. We've been around since 1899, so we are just thrilled to go ahead and make this donation. We stand with the communities during good and bad times, and we are pleased with the mayor's support and thankful to the mayor, and we are here to serve the community, so thank you.
Bill O'Keefe.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Bill O'Keefe. I'm with United Food and Commercials, Local 881. I'd like to thank the Mayor for her leadership during these unprecedented times. I'd also like to say that we are very proud to be in partnership with Jewel-Osco and the City of Chicago in rebuilding this great community of Woodlawn and across this great city. So we will continue to do what we can to help rebuild and in partnership with both the city and Jewel-Osco. Thanks.
Rosa, and then Frankie Payne.
Thank you all. Mayor, thank you so much. My name is Rosa Escareño. I'm the Commissioner for the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, and I just want to say that now more than ever, it is so critical to come together and together now. And I want to thank Jewel-Osco and the corporate leadership that is needed here in the city of Chicago to start off with Jewel-Osco in an area of great need. As the alderman indicated, this was a food desert, and having Jewel-Osco step up and with this amazing contribution, and then going forward and inspiring all of Chicago to give, to put back into the community so that these communities that depend on food and medicines can have that immediately. And make no mistake, as I've been out there in the neighborhoods, and the mayor said that I was a great public servant, but it's really about leadership. The mayor has pushed us to be out there every single moment that we can during this crisis and during the entire COVID. And I will tell you that the resiliency of our business community is so impeccable. They are fighters, they are continuing to go forward. And I am confident that with the leadership here today, that with what I see out in the neighborhoods every day, that our business community will come back. I also want to thank leaders like Tanya Trish from Illinois Retail Merchants Association and others, Illinois Restaurant Association, that have been our partners throughout this, and many others. And so the story of resiliency is what I want to focus on. And also that the Chicago 2020, our story is just beginning to be told. At the end of the story, I think what we're going to find is, as you hear the many residents coming through here and saying, love you all, I think it's about communities coming together. And we are committed to working hard to continue to support our businesses. As the mayor indicated, today we have launched the Chavez alert system for businesses that will provide an emergency texting, not only for an emergency crisis, but even for major events where we're going to close roads. It's a great tool to stay directly connected with those business corridors that rely so much on the information that they get every day. And so this is going to bring us one step closer to our business community. Also, as I indicated, we have been visiting many neighborhoods and talking to many businesses, and this is one of the many things that we heard from the business community. So know that during this crisis, not only have we been out there just to check in on businesses, but we are hearing from them as to what they want from government, what they want us to do to continue to support them during this important time. Additionally, to that regard, we're working with the Department of Buildings to try to ease the building permit process as businesses begin to rebuild and to reconcept their businesses, so that we are not getting in the way, but allowing them to open up much faster. We also, just so you know, since COVID started, the mayor pushed us to do more public awareness, and we have actually had several webinars, not just this week, but actually since the beginning of COVID. And I want you to know that we have actually held about over 10,000 people, individuals, primarily businesses, have joined our webinars. And so it's been a great way to reach people. We have not been silent. We have not been quiet. We are continuing to move forward. And with this Together Now fund, supporters like our corporate partners like Jewel-Osco are going to make sure that the small businesses throughout our entire city continue, that money continues to come in for this fund that we're setting up, because it is going to be a fund for our hardest hit areas and for those businesses that may not have the funding to actually rebuild. Because as the mayor's focus from the very beginning, the equity across our city must continue. And as we see these neighborhoods being very severely in need right now, the fund is going to be supporting all those neighborhoods that need it. So I want to challenge all of our residents to please support your commercial corridors, because remember, they employ our neighbors, they employ our teens, they employ everyone. And so we need to get everybody working. And as we start to reopen, encourage you to continue to contribute, as this is going to help us rebuild Chicago. Please help us finish the 2020 story of Chicago being a vibrant city that is going to work together now to revitalize and keep our city moving forward. And with that, I want to introduce one of a very close partner of ours, Frankie Payne. She's the Executive Director of the Southeast Chamber of Commerce. Frankie, thank you.
Good morning. Our businesses are resilient, they're strong, they're vibrant. So it's of no surprise that once the pandemic hit, everybody banded together. We strengthened ourselves, the community came together for cleanup and support, donations at chicagocovid.org. Everything came together to really push in a very holistic way. Even before COVID, our mayor has known that these communities need our support. There's been things in place to help us bridge the gap between access to capital. This is no different. In fact, Together Now is more of the same. Being able to bridge that gap for small businesses to be able to have access to things to keep their doors open is what every chamber's mission is. Jewel is an anchor in our community, and we all know that we need access to food, we need access to medication from every age group and demographic that's in that community. We are all touched by those needs, and for that, we are thankful for Jewel's partnership. These grants are desperately needed and will definitely bridge the gap. And so as a Chamber of Commerce, we're working on the ground to facilitate those things, to be the eyes and ears on the ground, to get that information back to the city of Chicago, because we know that with doing that, resiliency will happen and we will overcome. Thank you.
And now we're happy to take your questions.
Hi, Mayor. Jessica
morning.
D'Onofrio, ABC
Yes.
7. So my question to you is about the fund itself. Can you tell me how much money is in the fund so far? And when the grants are given out, will it be specific to South and West Side non-for-profits and small businesses?
So there's $11 million in the fund so far. The city seeded it with $10 million. I announced that the other day. And then we've gotten this incredibly generous donation from Jewel-Osco of $1 million. We are working out the particulars, but based on our experience in doing this work to help small businesses through COVID, we will certainly focus on those businesses that have been most hurt through the property damage and looting that occurred over the weekend and on Monday. We will absolutely have an eye towards equity, and we'll work with the Chicago Community Trust to really define the parameters, but it's for businesses all over the city.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a question from Bill Cameron, reporter at WLS AM. How soon do you expect to announce reopening of the lakefront, and what is it going to look like?
Well, we're hoping to get there soon. Obviously, the circumstances of this week have required us to focus our attention on other issues, but I'm hoping to be able to announce the reopening of the lakefront relatively soon with a plan towards safely minimizing crowding and really having some designated times for particular activities along the lakefront. We've been working very diligently on a plan. We want to make sure that we get as many voices into the discussion as possible, but I'm hopeful that we'll be able to announce something very soon. I know people are anxious to get back to the lakefront.
Mayor, this question is from Cheryl Corley. She says that yesterday's pool audio...
She's right here.
There you go. Well, she said yesterday's pool audio was a little corrupted. So the question here, many people across the U.S. and in Chicago are calling for the defunding, if not the outright abolition of the police. Is there some merit to the argument that fund could be better used for other social services? If not, why not?
Well, what I'd like to say is, in talking to people all over the city about the events of this week, what I've heard from people in neighborhoods is that they want more police protection, not less. And I certainly understand the concern about the amount of money that we spend on policing, not just in Chicago, but across the country. But I think in this time where people are feeling physically insecure, it would dishonor those real expressions to be talking about reducing the amount of safety that we're going to be bringing into neighborhoods.
Mayor, this is from Alex Keefe, WBEZ. The Chicago Police Department issued a requirement that all on-duty personnel wear CPD-issued surgical masks and gloves anytime they are out of their vehicle in public.
Yes.
Over the last week, there's been scores of officers, according to this question, at protests without these masks. Can you tell us why this is happening and what your office is doing to get officers to comply with this basic public health requirement in the middle of COVID-19?
Well, this was an issue that we saw way before this week. We've spent significant amount of money and resources to make sure that our officers are safe in discharging their responsibilities every day, including PPE, masks, gloves, cleaning supplies, and the superintendent I know has issued a number of reminders and directives, and I've told him that our patience with this has to be in an end. If officers are not complying, if they are not wearing the mask and protective gear that we provide, then they need to be disciplined. And that was an issue that we were dealing with way before the events of this week, but clearly no officer should be going out engaging with members of the public. It's for their protection as well as members of the public, and we expect them to abide by the directives that have been issued, and if not, then disciplinary action shall be taken.
Mayor, this question is from Fran Spielman. She has a few. I'll ask her first one here.
Fran always has a few.
Yeah, there are a few. Last weekend, your direction to the churches and temples was that Chicago would maintain the status quo, meaning no in-person services. What are the marching orders for this weekend? You've said you were working with religious leaders to develop safety guidelines for in-person services.
We have been working with that. I expect to be announcing them today, and we are as a result of the working group of faith leaders from a variety of traditions. I don't want to get ahead of the announcement, but we will be announcing guidelines for limited in-person services.
This is a question from Heather Cheroni from WTTW. My question for the mayor, what message does it send to Chicagoans who marched peacefully yesterday to see officers making vulgar hand gestures to the crowd and moving to conceal their names and badge numbers after you said that conduct would not be tolerated?
It won't be tolerated. We are actively at work identifying the officers who are responsible for that. In my view, now this is going to be the superintendent's call ultimately, but in my view, they've forfeited their right to be Chicago police officers. I've seen the photograph of the officer in uniform giving people the finger. We'll find that person, and in my view, that person needs to be immediately stripped of their police powers, and they should start the process for firing him.
Mayor,
we will not tolerate that kind of abusive, offensive conduct on the part of police officers, period.
Looks like she has a little follow-up on that question. How can CPD be reformed if officers are doing that?
Well, look, I think what we need to be clear about is context. Chicago Police Department has 13,400 sworn officers. Unfortunately, we've seen some, and I think a few, who have dishonored their badge, and they will be dealt with accordingly. But the vast majority of officers that are out there are doing their job the right way. They're engaged in constitutional policing. They've leaned into their training. So I don't want to paint with such a broad brush. Just as we've seen, unfortunately, some people in the crowds of protesters act in a way that is violent and criminal, we can't say that the vast majority of protesters are somehow untoward. They're not. The vast majority of protesters have been out there in the streets with righteous indignation, not only at the murder of George Floyd, but injustices here in our city, and they're rightfully there, and we got to protect it. But let's not paint with such a broad brush when we see individuals who are acting in a way that's not appropriate.
Mayor, this question is from Dana Kozlov. Mayor, what measures will be in place this weekend regarding securing the city? Will bridges be up, roads still closed, curfew continued, and are you expecting more protests?
Well, there will be more protests, we know that, and I expect them to be peaceful. And we are taking all the steps that are necessary to protect our neighborhoods, to be visible in high commercial areas, and to make sure that our district police officers have the resources they need to be successful in protecting the neighborhoods. But we expect there to be protests. But I think, again, what we've seen over the last 2 days is the elements of criminality that had tried to co-opt peaceful protests, that those elements are waning, and that's certainly my hope that that pattern will continue and it will just be peaceful protests, and we're going to do everything we can to keep the protests safe. The one thing that I would ask, and it's been very difficult because normally there's leaders of these protest marches. That has not been the case, what we've seen develop over the course of the city, which means it's more difficult and challenging to protect them. We don't want to co-opt the peaceful protests. We want people to come and express their passion. But it's helpful for us to know the routes so that we can protect it. What I've seen over the course of the last few days, which I will say candidly has caused me a lot of concern, is cars going right in the middle of the protest because the protests are going down streets that we could have easily blocked off from traffic if the protest organizers and their organizers, if they had worked cooperatively with us to make sure that we could keep the route cleared and we could keep the protesters safe. So that's my plea to the protest organizers. allow us to work with you so we can have designated routes so we can keep the protests safe.
Mayor, this question is coming from my station, ABC 7. Kanye West joined CPS students at Southside March demanding CPS cancel its contract with CPD. Can you talk about defunding CPS and some of the issues that were raised?
Yeah, we're not going to do that. Unfortunately, we need security in our schools. We spent a lot of time a year ago working through challenges that we had seen with police officers in schools. I think we've got a very good track record of this school year of making sure that CPS is in control, that officers are there for a limited purpose, but CPS personnel will deal with front-facing issues regarding students. I think that balance worked well over the course of the school year, because if it hadn't, we would have heard about it. So I certainly understand the concern, but I think we've struck the right balance. We're carefully calibrating. We're always going to be looking for ways in which we can do better, but I think we've got a system in place now that works well and shows a limited ability of CPD to be in schools, but all of that is now in the hands of building principals and CPS, which is where it should have been from the very beginning.
Mayor, complaints of excessive force are up year to year since 2018 per COPA data. What's your administration doing to ensure that police officers are using force appropriately, and what do you make of the increase? Well,
look, there's certainly been an increase over the course of the last week, but I have great confidence in both COPA and IAD to vigorously, expeditiously, and thoroughly investigate these allegations of complaints. And if anybody believes that they have been improperly treated, verbally or physically, by a Chicago police officer, I'll repeat what I've been saying all week long. Call 311 and lodge a complaint. That's the best way to address these issues. Please, folks, do not take matters into your own hands on any issue. But if you've got a complaint against Chicago police officers, call 311. COPA is ready. They've got a specific team that's designated to address complaints that are coming in related to the protests, and they're actively investigating these matters as we speak. They've been on the ground with this team, designated team, now for over a week, and they're getting things done.
Mayor, this is from A.D. Quigg at Cranes. Can you offer any updates on your talks with insurance companies, and of the businesses that have been closed due to COVID or post-looting, how many do you think will be open this weekend?
I think there are a number of businesses that already started to open this week, and that work will continue. Obviously, they're in varying degrees of readiness, both because of COVID, but also because of property damage and looting that happened. But we're doing everything that we can to support those businesses. As you heard from Commissioner Escareno, she and her team are in contact with hundreds, if not thousands, of businesses across the city to ask them what are your needs, how can we be helpful. And everywhere that I've gone, particularly in small businesses, I'm asking them the question around insurance. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The time for hiding behind bureaucracy and small print is over. We need insurance companies to send adjusters to our neighborhoods now and cut checks to put people back to business, get them whole so they can serve their customers, they can pay their employees, and they can do what is their lives' work, which is conduct their small businesses. And we're going to continue to press that point with insurers. We've been working in concert with the state who regulates these insurers, and if we don't see results, believe me, we'll be on the front lines calling them out by name. My expectation is that these adjusters are going to be hitting the streets today, tomorrow, until we make these businesses whole with checks that they deserve because they paid their premiums. And clearly, these are acts that were beyond their control, and we need to get them help. Now, let me also just say this. I've met a number of small business people this week who don't have insurance, whose businesses were shut down as a result of COVID. And unfortunately, they made a difficult decision to let their insurance lapse. So we need to bring help and hope to them. And I'm confident that the Chicago Now fund will specifically be helping those small businesses, because otherwise it's a total loss for them and they have nothing. So we see all business types. We understand what the needs are. We will continue that dialogue so that we can be helpful and responsive to their needs.
Mayor, it looks like we have about 2 to 3 more questions here. This is from Franigan. Sometimes the governor has said that summer school can be held in person with strict safety measures. Will you now take advantage of that and shift CPS summer school to in person? If not, why not?
Well, unfortunately, I heard about this on the news. So I know that CPS is evaluating after the Illinois State Board of Education canceled all in-person summer school. CPS will be evaluating. I don't have an answer for you now, but we will adapt as we are able to.
Also, will any of the 6 restaurant corridors designated for dining in the street be ready to open this weekend? If not, why not? What about calls for you to grant restaurants free 6-month sidewalk cafe permits and waive the 50% restaurant tax through the end of the year?
So I'm going to invite Commissioner Escareno. Many of these corridors are up and running, and what we need is indoor dining. And I'm going to keep pushing for that and hope to make an announcement next week about that. We can't allow these restaurants who've been desperately decimated because of COVID to only be able to rely upon a beautiful day and sunshine. We've seen this week, sometimes the sun is shining, sometimes it's raining. That's no way to be able to run a business. We need to give them the ability to have limited capacity inside with all the safety precautions that are necessary, but we've got to get indoor dining to be a reality here in Chicago, and I'm going to push to make that happen, and I'm looking to make an announcement on that as quickly as possible next week. Commissioner Escareno, do you want to talk about the corridors?
So, thank you. In regards to the corridors, we have been engaging with those specific corridors, and I will tell you that some corridors are coming to us with different ideas. So the application launched. We are ready to begin to roll it out, but I think we do need to hear the different corridors and what they want and what they need, and so that's coming along. But I think, again, we need to continue to listen to what they actually need. Some corridors, it works well. Some corridors may need some tweaking. To the question about sidewalk cafes, we continue to engage with our legislators, our aldermen. Many businesses want to have expedited permit process and reduce permit process. That's certainly the wish of the mayor, but we need our colleagues, I'm sorry, not my colleagues, but the legislators, because it is a process that includes them. Many aldermen are very much interested in this because this is what the businesses want, but that is a conversation that is ongoing right now. Thank you.
And Mayor, my apologies, I meant to say the 50-cent tax, not 50%. This is another question from Dana Kozlov. Mayor, you kind of answered this a little bit in a previous answer, but you talk about holding CPD officers accountable for actions like giving vulgar gestures to the public. Now that taxpayers will be helping looted businesses rebuild, how will the looters be held accountable?
Oh, we've arrested a number of people, and we are working cooperatively with the state's attorney to build cases against the people that we've arrested. They have to be held accountable, period. Thank you. You're going to have to speak up a little bit, Cheryl.
Is considering seriously talking about defunding the police. So do any of the suggestions that people have about shifting money from police departments to other social services that people might need instead have any merit at all? And is that worth a serious discussion in Chicago?
Well, it's not an either or, right? It really isn't. I spent the entire time that I'm mayor making sure that we are providing resources to valuable and important social services. So if you look at last year's budget, I'm going to wait for a second. If you look at our 2020 budget, despite the fact that we had almost $1 billion deficit, we didn't abandon our values. We put more money into homelessness services, mental health, public housing, affordable housing. So it's not an either or for me. It's not one versus another. And again, I understand the sentiment and the concern. I'm concerned about it as well. I don't like the fact that we're spending so much money on settlements and judgments related to allegations of police misconduct. You know, $100 million a year, that's not acceptable. And so we put some things into place to try to stem that tide so that we do have resources to put into neighborhoods, to put into making sure that our social safety net is real. So for me, it's not an either or choice. It's about looking at ways in which we can make sure that we live true to our values, even in this difficult time where we've got a substantial hole in our budget for 2020. An even bigger one in 2021. We are absolutely not going to be abandoning our values. And you'll see us as we go to City Council with an allocation of resources related to COVID and money that we've received for the federal government. There again, we're going to be speaking our values and supporting the needs of people all over the city around housing, homelessness, mental health, child care, health care. We're going to continue pressing on those issues because we know that they're important and necessary in bridging the divides and gaps that we're seeing all over our city. I'm sorry. Well, what I don't expect is at a time of great need for public safety, and I'm hearing that from residents all over the city, what I do not expect is for us to abandon those neighborhoods by reducing the police presence or resources. No, I do not. I think that that would be an abdication of my responsibility to keep people safe in the city. Now, we obviously always look at ways in which we can get things done more efficiently and more effectively. But in this time where we've seen terrible violence, let's not forget, folks, we had 17 murders on Sunday. Is this a time for us to be in retreat on bringing public safety to our neighborhoods? I don't think so.
Last two questions over here, Mayor. From Kelly Bauer at Block Club. Why is the curfew still imposed? When will it be lifted? And are you concerned about its impact on businesses as they reopen?
Look, I did not enter into a decision to impose a curfew lightly. It was the result of a lot of conversation with public safety, with other leaders, and prayer. No mayor should ever impose a curfew unless there's an absolute necessity of doing so. And after a lot of consultation, which is precisely what I did. Every single day since, I have spent time consulting those same folks, in particular our superintendent. Is this necessary? Is it needed? Every single day. And it's my expectation and hope that we will have multiple days of peaceful protest. This is new this week. Yesterday was one of the first days where we had just purely peaceful protests. We'll look and see what the weekend brings, and if we continue to see this, then I'll be the first one to embrace eliminating a curfew, but we're not there yet.
Last question, Mayor, from Shruti at Bloomberg. Some communities in Chicago say they haven't received an infusion of investment for development, including for small businesses, since their commercial corridors suffered with the riots of 1968. Organizers for communities such as Garfield Park say they aren't included in your Invest Southwest initiative. Mm-hmm. How do you overcome that much time and include all communities given limited resources and the challenges of the last few months?
Well, I think our Invest Southwest is a very thoughtful plan. Obviously, if we had unlimited resources, we'd be doing something differently. $750 million into our neighborhoods is a real investment. We want this to be catalytic and transformative. We have been engaged in very thoughtful discussions with people on the ground in the communities to co-create their future. not imposing that future from City Hall. And so we've been very thoughtful in our mission. Our resolve remains, and we will be bringing resources to those communities. The 10 that we've chosen are a start, not an end.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.